This is Goals with Soul, the podcast for visionary coaches and entrepreneurs, building your business with inspired action. In alignment with your mission and authentic message, so you can create impact for your soul clients and feel lit up every day. I'm your host, Jo Ingram, married mum of 3 daughters from London and a former ad agency director turned business coach and strategist. In Goals with Soul, we blend revenue generation with energetics, marketing strategies with pranic healing, and ambitious business goals with our soul's desires. If you're looking to build your business with less efforting and more ease, this is the podcast for you. Let's dive in. There was a time when I would have wondered why a discussion on self-worth would have been on a business or entrepreneurial podcast. Well, since then, I have become an entrepreneur and a business coach, and there couldn't be a clearer reason to be talking about self-worth, particularly to ambitious, high-achieving and driven women. Self-worth, when it boils down to it, can be that fly in the ointment that prevents us from really reaching our full potential and having so much more fun in our business. And it's something that I've had to come to terms with as a driven type A personality. It has been a surprise to me that a lot of the mindset issues always come back to not feeling good enough. And yet we're often extremely good at hiding those self-worth issues behind our masks of competence and intelligence and all-round capability. And today we're going to take a moment to really think about the ways that self-worth shows up and prevents us from reaching our potential in our businesses, prevents us from having ease, and prevents us from really feeling the joy that is ours to experience when we're running businesses in alignment with our own unique message and our own authenticity. I'm super excited to be sharing an interview I did with Dr Jomana Elaridi. Dr. Jomana is an extremely accomplished lady. She's a university professor, a TEDx speaker, an ICF certified life, career and executive coach, and an NLP master practitioner, as well as being the proud mum of 2 boys. Now, she works with specifically self-worth, confidence, and mindset coaching for women, and believes that self-worth and confidence form the foundations upon which most, if not all, aspects of our lives are constructed. She helps ambitious women struggling with not enoughness and self-doubt to reclaim their worth and confidence so they can live the life they want to live as who they truly are. Dr. Jomana believes that we can accumulate all the accolades, success and wealth we think we want, but if we don't feel worthy on the inside, we continue to evade genuine happiness and freedom. Now that's ringing so many bells. I cannot wait to introduce to you Dr. Jomana. Welcome, Jomana. So happy to have you on Goals with Soul.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
I am so pleased to have you here because your topic, and I know that you sent us so much on self-worth, is something that I personally have battled with in building my business. And I know when I speak to my clients and people who are drawn to my podcast, this is something that frequently stops us from getting to the place that we know we're capable of. Can you tell us a little bit about this whole self-worth piece?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, self-worth is related to how much we value ourselves. And believe it or not, Jo, up until about 5 years ago, if somebody asked me, what is your sense of self-worth? I'd have been like, what is that? Like, we know it as a word, as a term, but to really assess our sense of self-worth, I don't think many people actually think about it. So it's a deeply held feeling about our own value as a person. It is the belief that we have innate worth. And the thing is, how much we value ourselves, I personally and genuinely believe with every cell in my body, it dictates every aspect of our lives.
So true. And I know that you have a lot of history and a lot of experience that makes you the person that I know I wanted on my podcast to talk about self-worth. And I know how ambitious and directional you've been in your life. And I share that ambition too. I love that sense of momentum. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into a little bit more about how we can help ourselves over this self-worth issue.
I'm a university professor of chemistry. I'm a mom of 2 amazing boys. I'm happily married. And up until about 3-4 years ago, anyone would have looked at me and thought, oh, she's got it all. Wow. Like, she's married, she's accomplished, she's this, she's that. But from the inside, Jo, I was a ball of anxiety. I had chronic insomnia. I had anxiety. I was unhappy from who I am as a person. And I did a TEDx talk called Confessions of a Struggling Supermom. And trust me, I went back and forth so many times on the title because supermom? I'm not a supermom. Like, of course I'm not a supermom. But I thought it would be nice. Me and the TEDx curator thought it would be a nice thing to include because actually we all are supermoms, but we don't see ourselves that way. And I give all the credit to this TEDx talk that led me on this path. Because of all the research I had done to do this talk, I knew my life had changed before I even stepped on the stage. I knew that whether I got 1 view of this TEDx talk or 1 million views, my life would never be the same. Because I'm a perfectionist, recovering perfectionist, but at the time I was there. I did so much research about self-worth, about self-sabotage, about confidence, about self-esteem, about women and gender. And I did so much research that it actually comforted me to know that what I'm feeling is universal. But at the same time, it's unique. It manifests itself in unique ways amongst different women.
Completely hear where you're coming from, because this drive, this innate need to achieve is something that I've experienced and so many others, to the point where in my case it was burnout, both in corporate and also when I transitioned into coaching. And I hear you when you're saying that it all looks so perfect on the outside, but actually inside you're on your knees. What kept driving you forward, even though you knew that it wasn't something that was in alignment with how you wanted to feel?
Just you asking me that question gave me goosebumps, Jo. Now I know what drove me. It was that I did not feel worthy. And it was like I was running after the next achievement. So I didn't know that at the time, though. I wanted to feel worthy. And for me, I associated worthiness with achievements and accomplishments. So it was like, get your PhD by the time you're 25. Tick, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the effect of that wore off. Then I became a mom. Then I got a full-time job as an assistant professor. Tick, tick. Okay. And then each of these would wear off. And then I did the TEDx talk, and that kept me on a high, an achievement high for a long enough time. And then promotion, then teaching excellence award. And then during quarantine and lockdown, I realized, holy moly, I have achieved every career goal that I had put my mind to, actually went above and beyond, and I still don't feel very happy. And I realized that I had worked myself to the ground. I was absolutely exhausted on so many levels. And for what? So that's when I really started to dig deep and think, okay, why am I doing this? Is it really because I am naturally ambitious and I want to, grow? And definitely those things are true. But the way that always seeking, it was like, I need to achieve something.
Yes, you're seeking happiness, aren't you? All right, underneath it all, we all just want to be happy. All desires lead back to the feeling of happiness. And yet we're creating situations in our lives that are not honoring that most base need. And in fact, we're getting confused so much about what we need. And, in our business, in coaching, that desirable 6-figure business, and then multiple 6 figures, and then 7-figure business, and the TEDx and the book and all the things are just, like you said, we want to tick them off. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to achieve and wanting success. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how we can reconcile the fact that we do still want to achieve with the fact that we're making ourselves unhappy in the process. How can we kind of bridge the gap between those?
It's interesting you ask that, because when I started to learn about self-worth and how self-worth comes from within, that you are valuable with or without your possessions, no matter how you look, no matter what you do, no matter how much money you have, I started to think, yeah, but if somebody's already happy with themselves, what's going to drive them to actually want to be ambitious? And then when I started to implement certain actions that actually increased my sense of worth, I still have the same drive and ambition, but my intention behind them is very, very different. Now I want to make an impact. I know that I am worthy. I know that I am deserving. I know I'm more than good enough, but I want to make an impact. I want to share this message with as many people as possible. That's what drives me now, rather than I'm trying to fill a void, an endless pit of lack of self-worth. It's like, okay, so it's like filling a cup that's always leaking. So the TEDx talk filled it a bit and then it's leaking. And then, no, my cup is already full. Now it's overflowing.
That's such beautiful alignment. It makes such a difference when you get your mindset right about it. It's like you can still do the similar things and achieve similar things, but once you shift the way you feel about it, suddenly it's a very different experience. And instead of fighting against that happiness, you're actually embracing it and open the door to kind of all the things that you want in life, the success, the abundance, but also the fulfillment and the happiness. What is it about self-worth that means that so frequently us women suffer from a lack of it?
I want to be careful with my words, but at the same time, let's be realistic.
No, you go for it. This is a no BS podcast.
Okay. Well, the patriarchal society has done its fair share in keeping women small, and that hasn't helped. Having said that, I've also coached males, and I have had many male students who have had issues with self-worth. So it's not just women, but it is definitely more common amongst women. And this is because from the youngest age, unintentionally, perhaps by our parents, there are more expectations of young girls than of young boys. Even when my boys were young, Joe, so many times they'd be playing around and go like driving me crazy. And people would be like, oh, boys will be boys. I hate that term.
Yeah, I hear
if
you.
A girl were to act the same way as my boys were acting, not that they were doing anything wrong, just being loud, and, they'd be like, be quiet, sit still, close your legs, don't answer back, lower your voice. That's not how a girl smiles. That's not how a girl laughs. It's just pressure.
Yeah, I hear this. I've got 3 daughters. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, gosh, which phrases have we or other people ever said to them that keeps that system in place? It's definitely something that our generation has had to approach with honesty and know that we can make the change. And this is why so many of us are rising up and we want to be successful business women and mums and, great wives or partners and playful friends and all the things. But of course, we don't want to get burned out and stressed out in the quest to becoming all those things. And that alignment. And also the patriarchy and the masculine thing. I love to think of it in terms as well around the fact that having grown up in this patriarchal society, we really value or overvalue the qualities like action, decisiveness, constant striving, to the detriment of those feminine attributes of flow and alignment and guidance and inspiration. And intuition. One of the big missions that I've been on is to integrate those 2 parts of myself. And did you find that, when you were in that striving, pushing, overproving mentality, that you were drawing all those masculine attributes and not really calling in that like divine feminine?
Absolutely. I did not realize how much I embodied this masculine energy. I was in like beast mode for a lot of my adult life. Do. Get it done. And it's interesting, going back to one of your questions earlier, how do you reconcile? Is that if anybody has a healthy sense of worth, that means she values herself. What do you do when you value something? You take care of it. You love it. You take care of it. And so when a woman values herself, she takes care of herself. She takes care of her mental well-being. She takes care of her physical body. She'll take care of her spiritual or soulful side as well. And that's what will lead to following her ambitions, but it will stop her from burning out because she cares too much about herself and she won't do that to herself.
Is that how you first took the step from being that burned out, failing supermom into being someone who's so much more grounded and in alignment with her ambitions?
Absolutely, because I'm a firm believer in setting boundaries. And it wasn't until a few months ago that I realized I had to set boundaries within myself. It wasn't just about setting boundaries with others, which I was absolutely hopeless with, by the way. I was the yes person, like that. Yeah. Yes, sure, of course I will. And I'd be like
something else we're taught as women, right? To be cooperative and say yes more.
Obedient, cooperative, etc. And the thing is with setting boundaries, the reason why I personally, the more I said no to things that I really didn't want to do and knowing that I didn't have to do them, it's almost like a thermometer. I could feel my sense of worth increasing. It was one afternoon. Can I be completely honest here, Jo?
Oh, please.
I often used to take my son to the city to his football training, and it's an hour drive back and forth. And I work in the city. So a few afternoons, I would tell my husband, you know what, I'll stay back at work rather than you come down to the city and then go back up. I'll stay an extra 4 or 5 hours at work and I'll bring him up with me. You take care of the young one. And that would be exhausting for me, like stay an extra 4 or 5 hours, then get stuck in traffic. And then I realized, hang on, and why did I do this? Because I didn't want my husband to get stuck in traffic. And then one afternoon, I just thought, hang on a second. I'm valuing my husband's time, my husband's energy, my husband's feelings more than my own. Why am I doing this? And as much as I love my husband, he's a wonderful man. No, I should really love myself and take care of myself more. And that led to a huge shift in the way I started setting boundaries.
That is so beautiful. So what did you change in addition to sharing that drive rather than doing it every time?
Exactly. So we set up a plan, like we alternated, whatever, but then it gave me the courage to start saying no to other things. Friends would call and say, hey, we want to go out, let's do this. And I'd be like, yes. And I would be so exhausted from work, from kids, from whatever. And I used to just go. And now it's like, I really love you. I care for you, but I can't tonight. It's a tough night. I'm happy to meet for an afternoon chat, for a coffee or whatever. But those late nights, I cannot do anymore.
And the parallel in the area in which I work, and a lot of my listeners work as coaches, and I know you coach as well, is, of course, the boundaries that we set with our clients. And I know that when I first went into coaching, I'd come out of corporate career working in an advertising agency. And an advertising agency is service-based. And we have certain contracts put in place that promise a certain level of service level agreements. And they say things to the advertisers who would often be paying multi-millions of pounds for advertising. Things like, your team will be available anytime you need them. We can turn things around with 2 hours notice. And I mean, as much as we used to work, and I was very senior and I used to work on these contracts, we'd try to make them more aligned with people having lives. But the reality was that we were going after the cash. And if a client said they needed it and they wanted it, you said yes. And coming over into running my own business, I brought that mindset with me. And I was like, client can't make the call time, no problem. Oh, they missed a payment, no problem. Don't worry, everything's always pushing the boundary. And I've had to do a lot of work on myself to start reining those boundaries in. And I know that it's something that most coaches in their first, second year have to work at quite a bit to run it as a business and to set boundaries that not just in alignment with good contracts, but actually their own sanity. Because, for me, one good example is I'm in the UK time zone, right? And I work with a lot of Americans and some Australians. I've had clients at 6 a.m. my time, 10 p.m. my time. And in the most part, I don't mind it. But I have to be very protective about setting those boundaries. And sometimes it is a case of saying, well, these are my available hours. Please do choose one of these, or I have to accept that they might not work with me. You have to just set your boundaries and be really aligned to it and be confident that you're doing the right thing.
And Jo, I love what you're saying is that setting the boundaries, but I'm sure if you told your clients I'm available these times, they'll be fine. It's about you being fine with saying these are the times I'm available.
100%. And I have never yet had a client say they didn't want to work with me because they didn't like the times I've offered, but it took me a while to get there. It took me getting to a place where I'd had enough, where I was like, I can't keep working every single evening. I'm not seeing my kids. I'm constantly asking my husband to put the kids to bed, or I'm declining invitations from friends to go out for a drink because I've got a client in that spot. So, I had to learn it the hard way, which too frequently, both you and I have learned it the hard way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But we're learning and we'll constantly be learning. I'm sure we'll face our next set of challenges soon, but as long as we learn from them, we'll be okay.
Oh my gosh. And anyone that's listening to this might be thinking, you know what? I don't suffer from a lack of self-worth, or I don't really know if I do. What signs would you say are those hidden elements and experiences that are probably calling to a lack of self-worth?
I love this question because I'm sure if you asked me right in the midst of the peak of perfectionism, the peak of people pleasing, and you asked me, do you value yourself? I would have been like, of course I do. So some of the signs are perfectionism. And we like to say, no, it's not perfectionism, it's attention to detail.
That sounds like my CV. I think I wrote a couple of CVs, resumes, as they say in the States, that might have called to that exact challenge,
Yes, the thing is, with perfectionism, why is it a sign of lack of self-worth is because why does it have to be perfect? I really hope that your listeners actually ask themselves, why am I so insistent on something being perfect before it is done? And if it's because, well, I can't accept it any other way, that means you're associating perfection with enough, with enoughness. And being perfect is very, very different to being enough.
Oh my gosh, so true. I had to learn that again with time. I call it the do it messy. And it's just about getting it 80% done and putting it out in the world. And so many people I work with, the perfectionism thing just stops us from really reaching our goals, and not just reaching our goals, but with ease. We make it so much more difficult than it has to be, right?
And I'm sure your 80%, Jo, the 80% of a perfectionist is exceptional quality anyway. Let's be realistic.
I'm not even going to pretend that's not true. I know that's true. I know, which is how one of the ways that I've got over it, because I looked at my stuff that I put out and I'm like, you are in cloud cuckoo land if you think that's not good enough. Just move on. What you're doing is absolutely good enough compared to, I was about to say compared to, but I'm going to stop because we shouldn't even be comparing, should we? It's just about our own self-worth.
Yes, you've segued into comparison. If you find yourself comparing to others a lot, the way you look, how much money you've earned, where you are in your career compared to other people your age, etc., this is another sign that you are not valuing who you are and your progress and your journey. It's not that, oh, well, I'm doing much better than, this person who is in my year at college. I'm doing a lot better than them. That's also kind of your worth is depending on somebody else's level. And you don't want that. You want to have that sense of worth from inside. People pleasing is a big one. Do you find it hard to say no to other people because you worry about the way they feel? People pleasing is a really big one, and seeking people's approval. And oftentimes we want people's approval and we don't even really like these people very much. And we like to please. And so this means that we're not very good at setting boundaries. We say yes, 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 when our heart and mind and the soul is screaming, no, I don't want to do this. And the reason why the setting boundaries, difficulty in setting boundaries is a big one, is, as I mentioned earlier, when you say, every time you say yes and your heart is screaming no, you're putting more value in their resources than in your own.
Oh my gosh, that's so insightful. And quite often in that people pleasing space, it manifests with so many people in my industry, and I see them hiding for fear of showing up and being judged. And I guess that's part of the people pleasing.
Oh my goodness. It's like we're so in sync. My next one is fear of judgment. I swear.
It's like we've written the script here. Like, wow, I think the synergy and the synchronicity of this conversation is here to channel this through myself, because I'm so in line with this. I just feel that this is going to be my year of self-worth, and it's something that I'm so blessed to be able to share with the women listening as well. So thank you. Go on, tell us about fear of judgment.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Fear of judgment. Why do I feel that if somebody fears judgment so much, and this happens a lot, even with coaches, you'll notice that there's a lot of coaches, consultants, service providers that they fear putting themselves out there, showing up on social media, talking about their services. Why? Because I'm worried what people will think of me. Okay, so what people think of you, other people's opinion of you, why should that have more weight, more value than what you think of yourself? And so that's why when somebody has a healthy sense of worth, they value themselves. And yeah, sure, I'm being judged. I'm sure you're being judged. We're all going to be judged, but I don't put that much weight on other people's judgment because I value my opinion of myself more than I value theirs.
Yeah, and the mentors that I've come across in this business say things like, you can't take judgments to the bank. And you just go, you know what? It's not real, whatever people think. And in my experience, we always overblow what they're saying about us anyway, because people are so busy and distracted. It's like goldfish. They're like off. It doesn't matter. But it's really about us being able to just take that leap and stop hiding, because if we want to make not just the income, but the impact, we've got to put ourselves out there with vulnerability and just be who we're meant to be and make the impact and change that we're here to make.
Absolutely. And of course, negative self-talk. That's a big one. Our inner critic, who can be quite the bully and quite the bee.
Yeah, the inner critic. I don't think there's one single person listening that's not familiar with the inner critic, because entrepreneurship just opens you up for all of these things. It brings it all out, right? And quite often to be doing a 9 to 5 and a little bit immune to the self-worth issues that you might have. And then suddenly you become an entrepreneur and bam, it's in your face, because if you don't overcome these problems, then you're really going to not be able to build your business at all, which leads me on to my next question, which is, what can you do about it? Like, how are you going to take these symptoms, which I'm sure everybody's raising their hand and saying, yeah, you know I'm familiar with all of them or most of them. So how do we start to make that change and develop self-worth?
Absolutely. There are several things. There's one more I would like to add, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Yeah. The sense of overwhelm. We all have times in our lives, certain parts of the year where we're busier than other parts, and we do get overwhelmed. But if it is a constant, like that used to be like a phrase for me, how are you feeling? Overwhelmed, overwhelmed, overwhelmed. Why do you feel overwhelmed? Because most likely you're not saying no when you should be saying no. So you keep taking on more and more and more and more doing. You're probably being a perfectionist, which means that you don't send out that email, you write it, you rewrite it, you write it, you rewrite it, you delete, you do that until it's absolutely perfect. So a thing that should take 5 minutes takes half an hour. And then you think, and then you overthink and you overthink, and then you procrastinate and you put it off, and all this stuff is coming together.
The euphemism I've always used for overwhelmed is busy. Someone say, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy would be like the refrain that I would always come back with, which was kind of equating my self-worth to being busy. I've got so much to do. I'm such an important person. Look how busy I am, which was because of a lack of self-worth.
Amazing. Absolutely. That's so spot on, Jo. So spot on. So what can we do about it? Oh, this is going to hurt some of you guys. Accept that you're imperfect. What? How dare you, Jomana? Yes, we have to accept that we are imperfect. Accept yourself in spite of your flaws. Yes, we have flaws. In spite of your weaknesses. Yes, we have weaknesses. But once you accept, guess what? I'm imperfect. Just that the mindset's like, okay, that's true. I made a mistake instead of I'm such an idiot. What was I thinking? How could I do that? Oh, and all this negative self-talk. You're like, yeah, well, of course I'm going to make a mistake. I'm not perfect.
I'm just human, right? We're all allowed to be imperfect humans, flawed and imperfect, and making change and being leaders and all the other things.
Absolutely. So something I often get my clients to do is list characteristics or qualities within themselves that they value. And just getting over that, like, I don't have anything I value. Are you honest? Are you kind? Are you caring? Are you loving? Yes. Well, these are values. These are qualities that you can value about yourself. And we undermine these. But then I tell them, what are some things you don't like about yourself? And it could be, I'm temperamental, I'm moody, I'm this. Okay, just because you're moody and temperamental, does that make you any less loving, any less caring, any less kind? No, it's about accepting yourself, the light with the shadow.
Yeah, about deciding that those qualities, perhaps some of those are more feminine qualities, are equally as important as I hit 6 figures, I did a TED talk, I won an award, whatever those sort of more tangible and perhaps masculine things that we tend to value more. It's about bringing everything into play.
Well, that's the thing. Self-worth is based on the feeling from within. What I tell them is what or who is left over, God forbid, if you lost everything you owned, everything you did, every degree that you earned, all the money, all the cars, whatever, what's left over? That is what your self-worth should be based on.
Beautiful. So first step is acceptance.
Yes.
Where can we take it next?
All right. Speak to yourself like you would speak to a loved one. This is to tame or shush, actually, the inner critic. And this is something that I have practiced a lot. I did not realize how harsh I was with myself. And now what I do, and it's just become a habit. Okay, what would Maria do? And Maria is my best friend of 26 years. And if I can hear my inner critic show up and start to, spit its venom, I'll be like, hang on a second. I actually step back and I think, what would I say to Maria in that instance? And I would never say the things that my inner critic was telling me. And I would actually shush the inner critic and say, all right, thank you, but I'm human. I'm doing my best.
I love that.
And that's so, because we know, perfectionists know that we're harshest with ourselves than with anyone else. Have you ever spoken to a loved one the way that your inner critic has spoken to you?
Oh my gosh, so true. So be your own best friend. We put a lot of value on the big things and then devalue the little moments, the small achievements, the everyday things that we're doing. And we just move straight over them like they're unimportant and say, oh yeah, well, I haven't done X, whether that's hit 6 figures or get 3 clients or launch a new program or whatever. What you don't recognize is that you actually achieved some great training today, or you wrote a difficult piece of content, or all the small micro steps that you have to take along the way to any ambition, really. And we need to pat ourselves on the back. Well done. You did a good job today. And you did that as well as making a lovely meal and spending time with your kids and walking in nature and phoning your dad and doing all the other things that, make us whole humans.
Exactly. And that's actually one of them. Acknowledge, appreciate, and celebrate your efforts, your wins and successes, no matter how big or small. And as you said, we often undermine. I work with quite a few moms, and they have this struggle of they're working and trying to balance between work and home. I feel like I didn't do anything today. Okay, what did you do? I made lunch, I went to work, picked up the kids, took them to their activities, And I'm like, and you did nothing today? They're like, oh, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. Acknowledge as you said, be your own source of praise. Acknowledge yourself, appreciate yourself and the efforts that you're doing. I think that's really important. And setting boundaries.
So powerful. So we've got accept that you're imperfect, talk kindly to yourself, acknowledge and appreciate. What's next?
Set boundaries.
I knew that one was coming. There was a clue earlier in our conversation. Right? Yeah.
Set boundaries. Because I personally, I feel that setting boundaries is a source of resource management. What are our most precious resources? Time, energy, money, and I'm going to say feelings actually as well. And so when you're constantly saying yes, 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 oh, would you mind doing this for me? Because I'm really swamped. Can you do this for me, please? Because I have to go out with my partner and everything. Can you do this for me? And you say yes. You don't want to do it and you don't have to do it. You're valuing the other person's time and energy and feelings more than your own. And by the way, let's just get rid of the myth that you can't be kind and set boundaries at the same time. You can be very kind and very loving and very caring and set boundaries and practice it. No, thank you. Or can you do this? Look, I'd really love to help, but to be honest, it's just a very difficult time for me right now.
So set boundaries, very important. Is there any other steps that we should consider?
Well, here's the thing. If you value your time and energy and money, you invest in yourself. You invest time in yourself. You take time out to do what you want to do. It could be just do nothing. Yes, do nothing. That's time for you. It could be to meditate. It could be to read a book. It could be to watch trash TV. It's up to you.
Yes, this was a massive lesson that I had to learn after burnout, is going back to my self-care. And you know what? I don't even sit down at my desk till at least 10 a.m. every morning, because after I've dropped the kids at school, I always go to the forest and I walk and I journal and I meditate and I feed the swans. And I've got this whole thing. And ironically, some of my best work ideas actually drop in while I'm doing that walk. It's a win-win, really. Although that isn't why I'm doing it to really take care of myself. But it's true to say that when you are caring for yourself, then the channels are open and the intuition can drop in, and actually all things start to work better.
That's beautiful. Exactly. It's about valuing yourself and your time and your energy and your money, investing in yourself. I'm sure you have seen this, where you probably have a potential client and they just feel, I can't do that right now. Yet I'm sure they may be spending on others, on my kids. I was one of those. Like, I would buy and buy and buy, invest for my kids and everything, but then for me, no, it's okay. I don't have to get that now. And then I realized, no, I'm worth investing in.
Yes, I mean, that money mindset piece that often when we have low self-worth gets really tangled up about how we spend money on ourselves or treat ourselves to small things. And also when we're growing our businesses, I know that actually investing what feels like a lot of money on mentorship or coaching can feel like a massive step, and one that is so full of fear. And I've been through that exact process myself. And at the end of last year, I took on 2 high ticket mentors because I got to the point where I said, you know what, I'm not willing to go slow, and I'm not willing to kill myself in the process of going fast. I need to pay the money to save the time, to get the insight and the support so I can make my dreams come true. And you know what, that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And we're only a few months in, and already the transformation is incredible. And this is what I tell my own clients. And you know, sometimes you don't want to be like a snake oil salesman. You don't want to say, you know what, you need to pay the money, because maybe you don't. Maybe somebody can just bring that for themselves. But in my experience, working and investing in somebody to get you there faster in whatever it might be, whether that's business coaching or taking on a personal trainer or getting a massage once a week or whatever it is just something that you should really prioritize, right?
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
But we come full circle. So when you've got that self-worth in place, what's the promise? Like, what happens in your experience? You work with people who come to you with this problem and you've gone through it yourself. What happens when you start to put those pieces of the puzzle together and the self-worth picks up?
At the fear of sounding cliche, you step into your power. You feel unleashed, for lack of a better word. You feel lighter. You can do what you want to do. Fear of judgment is at a minimum, because again, you value yourself as the person you are from within, and yet the fear decreases, and just a sense of happiness and fulfillment and just being true to yourself. You give yourself permission to be who you are.
Amen to that. I mean, that's sensational. And to add to that as well, I found that when you start getting all of those elements in place, the stuff you want to achieve just gets so much easier. It's like your vibration's higher, your approach to life is with greater ease, and suddenly things just happen, synchronicities. And because of that, just having that self-worth piece of the puzzle in place, I think is absolute priority for everyone, and particularly for female coaches and entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And that's because you're not coming from a place of scarcity anymore. You're coming from a place of abundance. Sorry, I'm a bit woo-woo. I love my spirituality. So when you're achieving and overachieving and just doing, it's coming out of a fear. I'm trying to prove my worth to myself. And you have this fear that you're not worthy. So you do, and you achieve, and you overachieve, and you perfect. But when you have a healthy sense of worth, you're doing because you want to do, because you want to make an impact, because you want to contribute. So you're abundant.
Jomana, this is a woo-woo zone. So we are all with you on this, and feeling that energy and vibration from a great sense of self-worth is where you get to that level of literal quantum shift. You can go all the way once you've got this in place. But obviously we have to take the first steps. And I'm so grateful for you walking us through the symptoms so we know what it is, but also importantly, the areas that we need to actually make a change so we can get that self-worth and step towards our dreams. Now, Jomana, where can people find you online, and how could they work with you in the future?
Thank you, Jo. It's been a pleasure. On Instagram, my handle is Dr Jomana _mindset coach. And yeah, my page is just about self-worth, confidence, and mindset. And you can also reach out to me on my website, which is www.drjomana.com. And yes, I have a great transformational 12-week program, which I've actually called Courage, Confidence, and Clarity.
Beautiful. And I'm going to drop all of Jomana's links in the show notes, including a link to her TEDx talk, which, by the way, is absolutely phenomenal. You have to go straight there and watch that next.
Thank you.
And just to say, Jomana, thank you so much for joining us on Goals with Soul. It's been an absolute delight, and I hope we can speak again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I think we're soulmates, Jo.
I think we are.
Thank you.
As you heard, I recognise so many of those traits that Jomana spoke about as things that had come up for me, things like that perfectionism and fear of judgment, and pretty much all of those aspects, something that I can recognise in how I've behaved at some points in my business. And perhaps for you, they're really resonating and you're thinking, wow, I really need to deal with that aspect of self-worth. And I love how we stay so open to this level of self-awareness that really will allow us to break through those barriers and move beyond our comfort zones and take the actions that are necessary, really for us to embody coach, CEO, successful businesswoman that is our destiny, as long as we keep traveling our path and doing the journey and being open to the process. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. If this is your first time visiting with Goals with Soul, please do hit the subscribe button. And if you are a regular listener, please make sure to drop in and leave a review, particularly on Apple Podcasts, because it is time to spread the word for Goals with Soul and make sure that as many driven and over-proving female coaches as possible get the benefit of understanding all of the ways that we ourselves are already making change. And so, for your inspired action this episode, ask yourself which of these self-worth symptoms have shown up for you, and take at least one piece of Dr. Jomana's advice and see what a difference that can make in your work and your life this week. Have an inspired action week as always. Take care. Bye now.